Hello, everybody. Hopefully, you can see my screen. Sorry, we've been having technical difficulties, so entirely my fault. It's down to the operator. But there you go. So, welcome to the playoff preview show with me and Dan. It looks like you can't actually see me, but that's probably a good thing. And we've waited long enough, so we'll just crack on. So what we're going to do is go through the two quarterfinal matches that are going to take place this week, go through the teams and how we think that will, how they'll stack up. And then we'll then go through how both of those teams potentially could get on against the bye-week teams in the semi-finals. So we thought we'd start from the bottom seeded team and work our way up. So that means we are going to talk about Owoof and his Ogre team first. So I'll let Dan kick off the description of the teams, just because you've obviously played him twice already.
Yeah, this team's not very good at all. You've got to be a right loser to lose against this team. Yeah, they're a bit nasty. As my vampires found out last week.
Yeah,
so battered 2-0.
Yeah, so there's four Mighty Blow piling on pieces, although one of those has got a movement bust, which really makes no difference. It's not like he's an elf.
It does when he piles on, because then when he gets back up, he can only move one square.
True.
It does make some difference.
True. Yeah. It didn't make any difference to you, though, mate, to be fair.
I think the entire second half I was playing with Frowls.
Yeah, that's right. So as well as obviously that big line of ogre meat, he's also got one of his ogres has got guard. He's then got two black orcs which both have block. One has sure hands, and he's also got a Saurus with block. And then he's got 4 Noblars, one of which is dual level. Whether he levels it or sells it, we'll see. I think the key thing for Owoof is going to be boneheads, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite funny when you play against Owoof and he's got this team, because obviously all he wants to do is injure as much as possible. But when he's got a really important blitz coming up, he hates himself, but then he has to go and use a lizard or a black orc to actually go do the blitz, because it's not got bonehead and it's got block. And then it just proves to everyone that block is actually better than Mighty Blow.
Well, as I showed last night, my Mighty Blow piece did absolutely nothing all night, and my non-Mighty Blow piece killed somebody. So, yeah,
it wasn't block or Mighty Blow that made you lose. It was just
it was incompetence. Yeah, I know. It was Arsenal syndrome. That's what was my problem.
You saw the finish line and you froze.
Well, it's not the first time it's happened. I'm getting closer each season. Last season I lost out by 1 point. This season I lost out on TDD. Next season I'm going to lose out on alphabetical order. Something like that. So Owoof is actually going to be playing Zen. So Zen, obviously, I'll bring Zen's team up on my screen if I can. So he was in end.
Yeah, so there's a first thing you notice is a huge TV difference between these two teams.
Yeah.
So Owoof at I think it's 1450. Then you got Zen at 1860.
Yeah, that's right. I was, to be honest, because unlike you, who actually prepares for these games, I went in sort of with absolutely no preparation at all, and realised that I'd got like 200k in inducement. So that is something that Owoof may well make use of better than I did. I'd suggest getting a proper wizard instead of one with a painted stick. But yeah, I mean, Zen's got a really good team. His defense last night was excellent as well. He's got lots of block, lots of dodge as well. He's got a couple of movement busted pieces. But overall, he's got a really good team. I mean, his high elf thrower is, one of the most experienced players in the league with 52 SPP.
The problem Owen's got, though, is that if you looked at any of the other 5 teams that are in the playoffs, Elves will be the one team he doesn't want to face because they've got Blodge, and that's like the one thing that Ogres can't particularly deal with because none of them would tackle, not block themselves.
Yeah.
So you are just hunting for those powers, and you're not really going to get too many free dice on them because they're strength 3.
No, that's right. And obviously, everybody's got minimum of agility 4, apart from the Dark Elf lineman who got agility 5. So they're all dodging out on a 2+ in the majority of cases. So, as you say, yes, it's great if you can hit them, but if you've only got one hit a turn, and in that case you're having to use, I say, only a Black Orc or a Saurus, they do plenty of damage, but his whole strength of his team is potentially neutralised by that. So.
Yes, I mean, the Ogres have got I don't think they've got any tackle on the team. Background, but.
No, so he's really relying on rolling 6s, and with the agility of the elves, they can, like you say, not just dodge out, but also the huge movement differentials that they've got as well. He could very easily get the pitch stretched and either go try and encourage the ogres onto him if he holds it deep, and then spring the trap, and they're at the other end of the pitch, and the ogres are stumbling around trying to remember what their name is.
Yeah, I mean, one critique I would have about the elf team though is you look down the roster, nothing like stands out. You're like, whoa, this is really good, this roster, and whoa, this has got this has got that, and yet you look at the team value and you're 1860. That's huge. And yet there's nothing absolute stand out. I mean, there's loads of blodge and stuff like that, but it's not like
I mean, we've got 2 Dark Elf Witch Elves, both at 150k. So Walhalla has got block and leap. We didn't see leap at all last night. And with a lack of guard, it sort of neutralises it.
Leap's a new skill. He got it after.
Oh, did he get it after the game last night? And the other one's got sidestep, which obviously really just reminds me of Loz from your team in the first couple of seasons that you played. Very similar in the fact that you've got the block, you've got the dodge as well, you've got the jump up, and you've got the sidestep. So getting both of those pieces down is difficult. But then with Boudica as well, even if you got an opportunity where you think, I could create a surf opportunity here, it's not going to happen because of the sidestep. So they really, Witch Elves are, I find, one of the most frustrating pieces to play against.
Yeah. I love playing as them. They're fantastic.
Yeah, we know that, mate. So, predictions for this first quarterfinal. Who are you going for?
Zen. I think it'll just be frustrating for Owoof. When he gets the powers, then.
I think last night after my game, my initial thought was Owoof will win, just because all of that strength, hitting power, the mighty blow, the piling on. But actually, the more I've thought about it, actually, Zen, of all of the coaches, has got the tools to negate and counter that. I think this is going to be a really, really tough, close game. I'm still going to edge for the Ogres just so that we're not both going the same way. But my head says Zen. My heart kind of says Zen as well. But Owoof's just insane and a maniac, and somehow will make it work.
Well, I think definitely whatever it takes as inducements have to do better than what you did with your inducements.
Well, let's be honest, they couldn't do any worse. I mean, I might as well have just not had any. My wizard did nothing. My fouls with the bribe that I had, none of my fouls were successful at all, and I didn't need my babe because I had a player injured, but nobody was actually KO'd. So yeah, it was a complete waste of 200k, of which 60k of that was my own money, which I thought, well, I might as well use it to get in the playoffs, and that worked out well. Not that I'm bitter or upset or still very, very raw.
We stick at this side of the draw and look at Mr. Tiny Face, who will be the winner of these two.
Yeah, so Mr. Tiny Face was in not. So
yes, it was.
Let's
won
see.
his first 5. The curse of the last game of the season. Top team in every division failed to win.
Yeah, well, that's right. Buddy's joining in, but Buddy clearly thinks Mr. Tiny Face is going to be the overall champion because that's who he's definitely shouting on at the moment. Yeah, I'm just going to pass over to you for a second and try and stop him barking. So go for your life.
All right. Yeah, so I think at the start of the season, these were my picks for who would win the championship. So at the start, every single player's got block. I think every single player does have block now. Nearly every single player's got guard. So if you end up on a fight on the dwarfs terms, then you're screwed. You really have got to pull the dwarfs apart, get them fighting on uneven terms, kind of thing. For me, I think it depends who he faces. If he faces against the elves, I think he'll wipe the floor with the elves and he'll see himself in the final. But against the ogres, I think if he has to face the ogres, I think he might struggle. So he'll be used to throwing all these 2-die blocks. Suddenly it might still be 2-die, but it'll be 2-die the other way.
Yeah.
Got all his strength 5, possibly guard on the ogres as well. I think 1 or 2 of the ogres are close to a level. One's already got guard. Why is this big more getting guard between now and the semi-final if the ogres were to get through? It'll mean they'll have done plenty of Kaz against the elves as well. It was quite surprising that final game, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean Nate played really well with the Kemri side, and I mean Mr. Tiny Face he had chances, but Nate controlled it fairly well, really.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can't read too much into it when as the dwarf there was already through themselves.
Yeah, it's a nothing game at that point, isn't it?
And so he was maybe more playing for getting XP on some of his certain players rather than just playing purely for the win.
Yeah,
looking more at leveling individual players. So.
But again, huge TV for whoever is facing him. So if it's the elves, it's actually going to be quite an even match that inducements won't come into it.
He's actually got lower TV. When you take off the excess gold, because there's a bit of gold pumping up his value there, when you take off the excess gold, he's actually got a lower team value than the elves.
Yeah.
And this is what I was meaning when we said about the elves and how when you look at the elf team, despite it being such a high TV roster, you look at the roster and it's not leaping out at you as looking particularly.
And you look at this team. Obviously the dwarves mostly come with block and tackle anyway, but he's got guard on everybody, or almost everybody.
Well, nearly every player on the team is level 3 or level 4.
Yeah.
That's how well developed this team is.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think the elves were quite that way on.
No.
I think it was more a fact that a lot of the elven players start at high cost and then they have 1 or 2 skills on top.
Yeah. No, I think.
And also add 4 rerolls. Of the 2 quarterfinals, I think it's hard to bet against Mr. Tiny Face coming through against either of them. I mean, if he's up against the elves, I think he's strong favourite. If he's up against the ogres, it's partly going to be down to boneheads to a point. But
if there's one team that can go head to head on a bash front with Ouse Ogres, it's this team, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, the Ogres, it'll just end up coming down to who gets more Kaz early on, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
If one team gets the numbers advantage early on, then it'll start heavily swaying in one direction, I would have thought.
So if we head back to the other half of the draw, just remind me what division Nate was in.
So
Nate
was in Not.
So based on going into the final week,
we've made a really good point, actually. The TV difference won't be equal for the Dwarfs versus the Elves if they face off, because the Elves will have got smashed in player numbers in the previous game against the Ogres.
That's true.
They'll probably go with like a 1,000 TV.
that is infinitely possible. No, I mean, to be honest, of the two quarterfinals, that's the one that I'm quite intrigued by. Don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to all of the games, but that one particularly, I just think it's such a clash of the complete opposite ends. So, but yeah, if we look at Nate's team, so going into the final round of matches, Nate was really up against it for getting in. He was going up against obviously Mr. Tinyface, which was potentially ended up being one of the two top seeds, and needed lots of other results to go his way. He did his job early in the week and set the marker down, and nobody else who, looking at it on paper, perhaps should have been better. We all screwed it up, myself included, probably more so than anybody else. But Nate's team is when we just look at the Dwarves, obviously real good development right across the entire team. This is the opposite. Yeah. Obviously, it was a fresh team going in with the drafted Wolf.
So there was a drafted Wolf, but there was also a drafted Ghoul.
Yeah,
the Ghoul already died, and now the Werewolf is practically dead.
Well, the Wolf's out for the first playoff game, no matter what. If Nate, I think from reading the comments, I think Nate is intending to keep him with his low strength. I kind of get that, because if he's there not necessarily to be punching holes that you would normally expect with a Wolf. Actually, he makes a pretty good ball carrier. Movement 8. He's got blodge. He's also, if he does have to make a hit, he's still got the claw there as well. I'd be probably tempted not to hit with him if he does come back with frenzy and a strength 2. You're really going to put yourself in trouble. But if we look at the team that actually he's got available for this first playoff match, there's no development at all for extra skills. Obviously, he's got 2 Blitzrars with block, and other than that, it's a straight out the bag. Well, it is entirely a straight out the bag team.
It is.
He has got 5 rerolls, which with Khemri you kind of need, because you probably use 5 of those each half trying to pick up the ball.
No, you've got your hands on the throw round, so you don't need it.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, this team's a bit like Chicago Bulls going into the playoffs without having Michael Jordan available. It's like a one-man team, but without your one man.
Yeah,
it's going to be a struggle. And on that basis, I mean, very, very difficult to see the Khemri go through, I think.
Having said that, if he's got 2, 4, 5 players on 5 SPP, so if he were to prevail, he could potentially have 5 players level. It's unlikely that all of them would. But...
It feels like the playoffs have come one game too soon for this team.
Yeah,
you've got so many players on the cusp of the level. You'd have your werewolf back. Admittedly, he's only strapped 2 now, but like you say, he's movement 8. He's got catch. He's got dodge. He would be the receiver to go and score the touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's effectively an expensive gut runner.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit like your Holly, whatever her face is, in that she's saddled by this really slow team, but if she ever gets the ball, then she can run like crazy and just start.
That's right. So long as you give her the ball, and sometimes that's forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you don't play like a numpty and like let the opponent hit your gut runner every single turn, and
well, that's true. But what I was trying to prove is actually, she might only be armor 7, but she can take a hit.
It was like you're pimping her out.
Are we in man division for Atlanticus? I think we are, aren't we?
Man, yeah.
Okay, so obviously, there we go. So the Chaos team. So we haven't really talked as much about Patlanicus, and he's. I'll be honest, I've not seen any of his games just purely because the time zone difference. But he's got a pretty strong Chaos side with a couple of Nurgle players that he took on the draft. And again, it's hard for me to say when I've not seen the games. But other than the fact that all these player names confuse the hell out of me. So, for example, his Dark Elf is a Chaos Beastman, and his Elf is also a Chaos Beastman, and his Saurus Warrior is, you read the names and think, well, that's not that. But there you go.
It is pure chaos.
Yeah. But he's come through, obviously, the man division really comfortably. He's won of everybody going into the final week. The one person who was top of the league who didn't lose.
He is the only player is it the only player in the entire league that's unbeaten?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. He's got...
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to put a bit of shade on him and just say that half his games were against halflings or goblins. Just throwing these mind games in there, really.
Okay, well, it's you heard it here first. Our number 1 seed is not averse to dirty tactics. But
yeah, like you, I've not particularly seen much of him in his games. I think I tuned in for about 4 turns of his last game against the Halflings, but then the iPad died, so I didn't see the rest of it.
So the Chaos Beastman called Dark Elf is out this next game. So he will have a loner in the matchup against against Nate. I'm just reading the player names. So that loner, it all depends what he gets, and obviously with having mixed teams, you can have a whole range of options. I can't remember what team race he's using to remember what lineman he could get. Do you know off the top of your head, or
what for Patlanicus' team?
Yeah.
So his loner would either be a Beastman or it'd be a Nurgle Rotter.
Okay.
But I don't think it matters too much whichever one he gets.
No.
Because it'll just be a player that goes on the line of scrimmage, so they'll get based up next to a Tomb Guardian or something to tie one up.
So again, this is more developed team than Nate's. Obviously, most of the players have got at least 1 level. And he's given block to most of his Chaos Warriors. The Chaos Beastman level was leader, which is not a bad skill to have. He's only got 1 tackle piece.
When you've only got 2 rerolls, so yeah, it's definitely a good skill to
yeah.
take.
One tackle piece which he's not playing against Elves, so it's probably not as critical for him as it will be for the other half of the draw. His Beast and Nurgle obviously also has got block and guard, and his Nurgle Warrior also has guard as well. So that front line of scrimmage is it's going to be difficult to get, but from Nate's point of view, to get even one positive dice on those players on the line. He's probably going to be going red dice all the way, isn't he?
Nate's got 4 from 5 players.
Oh, he has actually with the Team Guardians, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So this is why you're here for the insightful commentary, and I just ramble about. So, predictions for this quarterfinal?
I think it would have been a lot more interesting if the werewolf was available, but without it, I think Nate's entire game plan changes, because I dare say, I mean, I've not seen an awful lot of Nate's games either this season, but I dare say the plan would have usually been get the ball to a ghoul or get the ball to the werewolf,
yeah,
and then create a path through for the pass player to score.
Mm-hmm.
And for this game, it's not going to have either of those players.
No,
and the team value between the two teams is only 70,000. So unless Nate's got some cash in the bank to be able to afford a mercenary ghoul, then it's going to have to rely on a throw rider doing the heavy lifting. It's only usually 2 movement 6.
Let's just go back and see what Nate's bank is looking like. He's got 60k in the bank.
Yeah, so I mean, he could take a mercenary ghoul, which would cost him 100,000, which will be 30k out of his bank. But I mean, that player doesn't have sure hands, so they're picking up on a 3+, but they don't have a reroll to do that.
Yeah, and it'll be loner as well, isn't it? The mercenaries have loner.
Yeah.
So I'm also going to agree and say that I think Pat Lanicus is probably the favourite for that quarterfinal.
I mean, like I say, the playoffs really has come like one game too early for Nate's team.
Yeah,
it really could have done with that one extra game.
It will be interesting how he gets on next season. Obviously, if he does bring the team back, depending what happens in the quarterfinal, doesn't make a huge difference. He might get a couple of levels, but going into game 2, 3, and 4 next season, he'll probably have got levels on most of those that have got 3 to 5 SPP, and it could be a very, very different team at that point.
Yeah, definitely. And then you hire some new quality to do the scoring for you, and hope these ones don't die.
Well, that's right. And also the draft could come into it for him as well.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Oh, right, sorry, mate.
It's all right.
So moving on to your team.
What? The champions?
The current holders, I think, is how we describe them.
Champions elect.
So obviously you've won the last 2 seasons with predominantly a Dark Elf team. Went for vampires this season, and really carried on where you left off. I'll need a season to bed in.
That was my thought process. I was just going to take a team and just have a season of development, and then next season bring them back and hope to push for the playoffs next season. This season went really, really well. I
mean, you've
the first 5 games.
You've got quite a few level ups as well. So you've got obviously the 2 players you drafted, which were already pretty good anyway. I mean, Brian the Vanquisher has been particularly impressive at removing opposition players. With both the Mighty Blow and the Piling On. For all your block comes first, it's interesting that you took a mighty blow piling on piece. Obviously has blocked, but it's massively
Brian
helped.
started this season with 16 SPP.
Okay.
So he's earned 25 SPP so far.
Has he scored any, or is it all from Kaz?
I think he scored once, and then the rest have just been maiming people.
So really, he ought to be on Owu's team.
I think Owoof would make room for Brian amongst his team.
I think so too. I suppose the only thing he's missing is frenzy. That would really turn him into a. If he's not already a killer, that would take him to another level. But looking at your team, obviously you've currently got 2 missed next games, which will have been burnt out by the time you get to the semi. So you're going to have your full strength team, although you've got 1 thrall on 6 AV, and you've got another thrall that's got 2 agility. Any plans for firing either of those? Or would you prefer to keep those plans as a secret?
I mean, so I guess I'll see how much I get from winnings for that buy round.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll definitely replace Eric. Well, so what's really annoying is that Eric has actually got a double for his level up.
Okay.
And yet he's armor 6, so armor 6 instantly I want to fire him. But then when you get a double and it's your only double, it's a little bit more.
What are your options on a double on a thrall?
So guard is a potential. Can't really go wrong with guard. I could take leader. Vampires love free rolls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I'd probably argue against guard, for the simple reason that if you're using guard, that means you've got to have him stood next to people, and if he's stood next to people, he's going to get hit, and his armor value 6 isn't going to hang up.
Yeah, correct, absolutely. But at the same time, if the Thrall's getting hit, then the vampire that stood next to him possibly isn't getting hit.
True. So, I mean, obviously, what we've talked about for Mr. Tinyface, we talked about how he will go up against the 2 options that could come through from the quarterfinal. So, from your point of view, looking at this completely unbiased, unfortunately, I think whether you get Atlanticus or Nate, your team has far more development than both, and you're number 1 seed for a reason. And despite the fact that you keep winning, and there's only Owufu who can stop you. I'm not convinced that either the Khemri or the Chaos have got the tools to stop you going into the 3rd consecutive bingo bowl.
Well, for me, I think even if the Khemri team was had their star player back on the team and stuff like that, I think Khemri is quite a good matchup for my vampires because this team's quite slow. I'd always get that chance to be able to just hypno gaze and just bypass the Guardians and just walk straight into his cage and sack the ball carrier. So yeah, Khemri is probably a really tough matchup. Facing off against vampires, so Khemri really wouldn't want to face vampires.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think it'd be very good for the vampires in return.
And Chaos, obviously, Chaos by name, Chaos by nature, and he has got a few more skills. He's got a lot more block than you would have, I think.
Yeah, he does. Most of his team's got block. Yeah. So even though Chaos team isn't any faster in terms of like the highest speed player on the team, they are more manoeuvrable, and the fact that anyone can be strength 4 on the blitz makes them a bit more manoeuvrable as well. I think I'll struggle against the Chaos. Lots of strength 4. Got the Nurgle Beast of Nurgle. That's it.
So
it'll be a tough matchup.
That kind of.
Yeah, I'm definitely.
Go on, sorry, Dan.
I'm definitely on Team Nate and praying for a Nate win, I think.
So that goes through all the 6 teams.
You're already out as
Oh,
well.
I misheard you then.
Yeah, I was mishearing you. Your audio seemed to have gone.
Right.
For me anyway.
Well, hopefully the stream stood up. But so yeah, that's the 6 teams covered. Obviously, that predictions gives us what we think will happen for both the quarterfinals and potentially into the semis. I think our plan is to then do a preview show of the sort of just before the bingo bowl. I think that would probably make sense for us to do our next show then.
Yeah, that sounds good. I did put in the Discord yesterday asking who people thought was most likely to win.
You did? What were the results of that? Because I forgot to go back and have a look.
I think everyone wanted the Ogres to win. They had been commonly referred to as the People's Champions.
Was that coined by Owoof though? I think he was.
Possibly. I don't know who came up with that first. I think there was the Rock GIF that got shared quite a lot.
I mean, to be fair, with the way of the draw, I think if we assume for a second that the top 2 were to go through, you against Mr. Tinyface, and that by no means is a given, because I think we've got 4 really interesting games to have before then. I think that would equally be a really good final. I think definitely the Dwarves would be a tough matchup for your vampire team if everything ended up going that way.
Just off the top of my head, I do believe that the wildcards have gone out in the first round every single season so far. So, Owoof and Nate, if they are to win, they will be the first teams as a wildcard to get through.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain that last season and the season before, the wildcards both went out each season.
Well, I think it will certainly be interesting. I mean, obviously, the fact that Owoof and yourself, who have been between the 2 of you, have hogged all of the bowl matches so far, meant that Jack was always going to be an extremely competitive league. So to see. Go on, sorry.
I think we're all a bit biased. We all think, oh, my league's the most competitive. When I looked at it, I thought my league definitely is. We've got myself and Owoof, who have both won championships before, and then you've got Kantor and Nadrak, who are both in the playoffs last season as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 4 players there that have all regularly been in the playoffs or had recent history in the playoffs.
Yeah. And I think that's partly, obviously, with the way that the leagues were drawn this season based on TV, made it really interesting, because you ended up with just by coincidence that all of those really good teams had got a similar TV, meaning that you were all drawn together. And I'm not sure that will be the case next season. If people bring the same teams back, because obviously from your point of view, your TV was brought really far down because you started again with a new team, so therefore your salary cap was low, and I think obviously Owoof did the same. I can't remember.
Yeah,
the other 2 were also fairly new as well. So
I think really there was only was there 2 or 3 teams I think that brought back existing teams, wasn't it, this season? Yourself, Zen, and
Mr. Tiny Face's Dwarves, yeah.
So yeah, I dare say there'll be more teams next season that'll be bringing back.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that really shows the balance of the league and the competitiveness of the league is the fact that even though there were teams that were brought back, these new brand new teams were also extremely competitive and have made it through to the playoffs as well. So, you know, when you look at obviously you, Owoof, Nate, I think Pat Lanicus is new team as well. So that, you know, of the 6 teams, there's only 2 that were returning teams. So it does just show the competitiveness across all 4 of the divisions.
Yeah, well, and from first place to 6th place in each of the leagues, there was a lot of competitiveness in the fact that teams were always just taking points off each other, and so you went into the final couple of rounds, and there was teams that could either finish second or they could also finish last.
Yeah, that's right.
After 3 games or 2 games, Owie, for example, was bottom of the league in Jack.
Yeah, he lost both 2. Yeah.
And I've got a feeling. I think it was it Man Division where the team that was in second place could theoretically finish bottom. I think there was 1 point separating second and 6th in that league.
That's right. And N Division, my division, going into this time last week, 3 teams could have made the playoffs, depending on results. So it really is right across all 4 divisions. There's just so much competitiveness, and it really does leave the league as a whole in good stead for coming seasons as well.
Be safe for it. I think even that dude playing wouldn't have been far off because he didn't he finish on 12 points, or am I getting mistaken?
I can't remember.
No, he didn't. We're making that one up.
But just before we finish, one other thing that I noticed that I'll do a shout out for as well, just in case anybody is still with us after however long we've been live for, if you've not all nodded off, is Ninja Blaine is stepping down as the draft secretary at the end of this season. So we are after a new draft secretary if anybody is interested in that role. So if they are, mention it in the Discord, tag in Nate and Eric, and definitely put yourselves forward. And I'd also just like to thank Blaine on behalf of everybody for the fantastic job he did sorting out everything for the draft for the last 3 or 4 seasons as well.
Yeah, definitely a big job of it. Done well.
Yeah. So on that note, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Hope it's been interesting, and good luck for those 6 teams in the playoffs. And we'll see you all again in a couple of weeks when we do the pre-bowl match.